Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Thank you so much, Gertrude, for inviting me to be a part of Her Story and share my journey. My name is Kate Strong. I'm actually a nomad, but I'm usually based around Britain in the south of England or Wales. And here is my story. So today I'm more known as an adventure activist. I've earned multiple world records in static cycling to champion equality in sport. I've more recently cycled 3,500 miles around Britain on a handmade bamboo bike, visiting upwards of 50 communities to talk about climate change and discover what they're doing to mitigate the environmental and social concerns around it. Yet, I'm going to start my journey about 12 years ago for what actually created this impetus, because I think it's important to not just see the successes that we achieve, but also find out the darkness sometimes that drives us. And for me, that was a very toxic relationship. So throughout my life, I was, I suppose, a very good girl. I come from a very traditional family in Wales, where my parents are still married, and it was expected of me to go to university, get a job, get a house, probably a dog, find a husband, get married, have kids, etc., and live until retirement. Even though my heart screamed adventure and exploration, I was always drawn or pulled back to living that conformist life, more for obligation and love of my parents than the desire for me. And that unfortunately meant I settled. I settled in a job in aerospace. I settled with a partner who initially we cared for each other, but there was none of that spark. Yet I think, unfortunately, gradually and over time, because I wasn't honoring who I was, I forgot what drove me, what my passions were, and also my North Star, my values, as well as what I wouldn't allow people to step over, my boundaries, as much as what I wanted to do. So throughout that 9-year relationship, it started to become more and more controlling. We moved from Wales to Australia, where I set up a franchise. So I owned a Subway franchise in Sydney, later flipping it into a guest house and restaurant in the Blue Mountains of Australia, of New South Wales. And I lived there for 9 years. But unfortunately, through this relationship, where originally was started as, I'll miss you when you go to the gym, or why do you have to go out for friends? Why don't you just stay inside and drink? It creepingly turns into him tracking my phone, not allowing me to spend any money, and me basically not being able to say no in many situations. So by the end of our relationship, I was running the whole business by myself, and also doing his washing, doing his cleaning, bringing him food and bread, going up to buy the newspapers. And it was a very, very sort of restrictive life. I wasn't allowed friends without his permission. And I also realized that I was kind of trapped in this. We had a mortgage, we had a business. And so I did what most sane people would do through this, or insane people maybe. I took up running. You don't have to be a psychology professor to realize that I was running away from my problems. Running gave me that, albeit very short-term freedom, to not actually realize that I was unhappy, terribly unhappy in my life. It gave me a sense of apparent control, that I thought I had my stuff together. And externally, people thought I looked really healthy and fit and happy because I was living a dream life. But The shell might have looked all pretty with ribbons and butterflies and rainbows painted all over it, but inside was hollow, and I'd really lost myself. And it's unfortunate that most of us don't, we see the signs, but we wait till that cliff edge moment before we actually take action. And I was no different. It was only when he asked me to marry him did I realize that I was actually committing to a life of forever with him. And in that moment, I also realized I couldn't say no. We had a mortgage, we had a business. My parents had also lent us a little bit of money to buy the house. And I was afraid that he'd negate on all of our debt and leave me not just alone, but also with this huge mortgage and not being able to pay it. Because he'd also taken away my self-confidence, or I'd given it to him, because no one can take away anything and people can't make us feel things. But I truly believed his words that I was a nothing and a nobody, and lucky that he put up with my idiosyncrasies and stupidity, forgetting the fact that I had 2 masters in engineering and used to be an aerospace engineer. But aside from all of that, I believed him. Fortunately, my cliff edge moment happened 6 days before our wedding, where unceremoniously he left me. Also in Australia, being completely isolated from all my friends and my family, he also left me with a big debt, a business to cover, and because we were de facto married in the eyes of Australian law, a legal battle to try and separate our assets and sell the guest house that was landlocking me to the property to work 7 days a week. I decided not to go bankrupt and to keep working the debt because I didn't want other people to carry my mistakes. It was my fault we were here. It was my responsibility. I should have said no to his marriage or been more responsible. And so every single day I wake up at 7:30, I'd work, I'd crave the 5 p.m. after all my guests had checked in, hopefully, and I'd go to the bar to take the edge off things. I was drinking heavily throughout that period, blaming him. How dare he do this to me? I'm in my mid-30s. It's not my fault I'm in this situation. And I can't remember the exact night, but it was yet another alcohol-fueled party where our events were getting more and more extreme. I by then had 2 or 3 close girlfriends, and I was thinking, fast forward 5 years, and I'm looking down at this moment. Will I be proud of this, or will every night of alcohol just blur one day into the next? How can I stop drinking the toxicity of my past in the today and blaming what happened to me from 5-6 months ago? When will I actually say enough is enough? I've played victim long enough. Now I need to be responsible and build on this, albeit shaky, foundations. And it was strangely in that night, I was wearing party hats instead of a bra. So I was like prancing around pretending to be Madonna. And I just held my bottle of wine in my hand and went, "It's my last drink, ladies." I've always had a dream to be an Ironman triathlon for 10 years, which is a 4.8 kilometer swim, 180 kilometer cycle, followed by a 42.2 kilometer marathon run. I wanted to do this when I met my ex, and he convinced me that I wasn't good enough and that what I was doing was my level. Well, I'm tired of living beneath the glass ceiling. I'm going to train to do an Ironman, but I also don't want to be my own limitation. So I decided to aim to be a world champion Ironman, not to be the best in the world, but to find out my best. And the only way I could do that was to remove any barriers from myself. Of course, my friends didn't believe me. I was half drunk. I mean, I probably didn't believe myself either. But that commitment, that public declaration, albeit to a room full of strangers almost, really held me accountable. So the next day I found my trainers. I started to run again. I could barely run a mile. I had really bad asthma at the time. But I said, well, what would a world champion do? I need to project myself into the future and live and breathe and do every single thing that a champion would do, not just swim, cycle, and run, but how would they sleep? How would they think? What would they do to talk to themselves? What about fuel? What about every single element of my life was deconstructed and reconstructed up to be the perfect world champion person? And gradually and over time, my village of 2,000 in Blackheath in New South Wales would laugh at me. They'd see me at 4 a.m. plodding up and down the road, either on a borrowed or a secondhand bike, or trying to hitchhike my way to the local swimming pool because I still didn't have a car. But they saw my commitment. And within 14 months, I found myself on Australia age group team for triathlon. I'd qualified somehow in one of my races, and the community rallied behind me. They crowdfunded to be able to pay for my flights. They also asked a local hospitality school to babysit my guest house so I could go and not worry about my guests not being served. Because my why was so strong, the how sorted itself out. People were enrolled in my journey. So I found myself in World Championships in China in Weihai in 2014, and hearing all the triathletes in front of me. This is my 8th ever race. They were saying, "Oh, how will you do at the interviews?" They were saying, "Oh, my leg hurts. I'm hoping for PB, or maybe I'll finish top 10." But no one was actually owning the top spots. So eventually, as I was the new kid on the block, somebody thought they'd interview me for the media, and I said, "Well, someone's asked for podium, another one's got 10. There's only one spot really left, I suppose, and that's number 1. So I guess I'll aim to win it." And again, it was done to keep myself accountable to my greater self. I didn't want to shrink in front of these veteran athletes who were quite intimidating physically and obviously knew each other and knew what they were doing. I really felt an imposter in this situation. But throughout the race, it was in long distance triathlon. I won't bore you, but there's 5 different triathlon distances. It's one just shy of Ironman in length. I became a world champion. And so by my commitment, I became number 1 in the world. And that really sort of fueled me moving forwards. And I'm talking far too much. I'm so sorry, Gertrude. To my
Oh,
journey in sports.
Kate, your story is absolutely incredible because you went on to achieve 3 world cycling records, and that's an extraordinary feat. When I was reading your bio and just seeing what you've actually done, in my head, I'm asking, I want to know if you can talk us through this journey of these records and highlighting any particular challenges that you faced and how you overcame them.
Sure. I realized that, so the reason I started the records is I didn't want to compete against others. And so what I started was I wanted to keep that drive and keep the glass ceiling as high as possible. And the world
Yes.
records gave me that. So I wanted to compete against myself, because if I do well in sport, I do well in business, because my accountability or my BS line can't be different levels to different parts of my life. So it kept me high. I started with 30 minutes training 3 times a week on an indoor static bike. And as you know, one of the world records was for 24 hours. So just by adding 10% every single day, every single week, I got up to 24 hours. And that was over 15 months with 3 failed attempts through that as well.
Okay. Wow. That's just incredible. Now, you've mentioned that today's leaders have a significant role in making the world better. And you've emphasized communication, empathy, strength, vision, and integrity. Can you share an example from your own experience where these qualities were crucial in achieving a goal or leading a team?
I'm just thinking of specific examples. I'll keep it to my sport if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Being fiercely independent, having been hurt in the past, I realized that I can play a game of 1. And this reflects a little bit on maybe your life as well. I could set my life up to make sure I'm okay. I could set my life up to make sure I'm financially independent, that my little bubble of joy is exactly that, my bubble of joy. But I realized that I am the greatest of the lowest denominator in my society. So unless I bring everyone up to rise and I support the level of our collective community, I'm not winning. And so I think leadership is not about coming in and doing what I think is right. It's about listening. It's about understanding people's situations. And that's partly why I'm nomadic. I realize that I have judgments on people who don't recycle, do certain things I don't agree with, who drive SUVs rather than take the train, even though they live next to a station. I've got this environmental obvious, examples, but I have
Mhm.
never lived in their life. I've never lived why they do this and expressed curiosity. I've just come in righteously saying my way is correct. So I've
Yeah.
lived in nearly 100 homes since June last year. So in 9 years, I've lived in 100 different locations, understanding how it is for them. I think for leadership, the example is express curiosity rather than assumptive that we know better, because
Mm.
there's lessons and there's gold in every single element of leadership, in development, in society, in business. And the answers aren't always with one individual, they're with the collective consciousness of being together and working towards that common goal.
I love that. Now, drawing from your success in sports and as an age group world champion in triathlon, what key insights have you applied from your athletic discipline to your role as a coach and an enabler for leaders?
I think the biggest lesson is we can only learn through action, and failure is part of success.
Mm.
We can't read a book about playing golf and watch TV about playing golf. It's only when we put the club in our hands and swing towards that ball do we understand that our hips need mobility, or we've got tension in our shoulders, and we can actually work on strengthening those areas to improve our game. I think
Mm.
there's a fear in business, and also when we're standing for something like, as you know, I do a lot of positive activism around climate, and there is inertia for fear of getting it wrong. I think we should
Mm.
embrace that. In sport as well, we work our muscles till the breaking point. I very rarely do the maximum reps at the end of a session in my final set because I want to find out that my muscles are weakened. So I may set the target of 10, but I only do 8. I celebrate that because it means
Yeah.
I've pushed harder than before, yet we
Mm.
stay well within our comfort zone in business, in our minds. I think we need to be more daring and bold and aim for the stars and be happy with the moon.
I love it. Now, with your background in engineering and as a coach focused on behavioral change, how do you see technology playing a role in facilitating positive, conscious change amongst individuals and communities?
I think that's a really interesting question. And I was actually on a panel last week talking about the importance of AI, the, the,
Mm. Mm.
the concern that we have over it, but also the potential. I think technology is our tool, just like our minds are our tool for our body as well. It
Mhm.
depends what heart we put into it. So if we use technology to deliver the answers, then maybe it'll become a little formulaic and potentially push us towards an angle that isn't appropriate for our life. I use ChatGPT just as one example of like modern technology to ask
Mhm.
questions that give me 5 examples of different ways of seeing this one problem. How
Yes.
would 5 or 10 different communities assess this event? And sometimes I'm looking for a 180 degrees. What I think is a problem, they may see as the answer.
Yeah.
So I think we can use technology, but do remember that it's our heart, it's our purpose, it's our values that drive us. It's not our logic, it's not the spreadsheets, it's not the goals, and it's definitely not technology.
I love that. Now, you're actively involved in community led challenges, including planting 3,000 trees. Can you share more about these initiatives and how you mobilize communities to participate and commit to such an environmental cause?
I'm constantly evolving to find ways to engage people in that. The hardest step is always the first shift of behavior. When there's
Mm.
momentum, when we've already got the gym membership and going 2 times a week, we can increase 15 minutes to an hour. But it's
Yes.
that first step that's usually the biggest barrier. And so, yeah, last year through my 3,000-mile cycle, I committed that anyone who joined me on the bike ride, I'd plant a tree. And the goal was a person a mile, hence 3,000 trees. And I didn't reach that target, but I found out why people weren't coming. And so I have planted 3,000 trees subsequently, but it was a way of motivating, finding out what some people like the carrot, other people like the stick. What is the way that people can get engaged in? And so, as you know, later this year, I'm also evolving another project as well to find out how we can really sort of get people to step up and think outside of our to-do list yes, it's important in our life, but we also need to think, just look up and realize that we're here to live experiences. We're here to create connections. We're not here to make or do things. This is what's important. This is the gold. The rest of it is noise. So yeah, the 3,000 trees was my little carrot, if you want, or a stick, but when you plant, to motivate people to get on their bike and join me.
I absolutely love it. Now, maintaining high performance in various domains can be incredibly demanding. How do you balance your personal well-being with the pursuit of high achievements across different aspects of your life?
It's a really, really interesting question, Gertrude, and one that I'm still working out. I just want to say I'm definitely not a finished product. I do struggle with perfection paralysis sometimes, and I wouldn't say I've got it right, but I try to show as much compassion to myself as possible. One example is in February, I had a 160-mile bike ride to do, and I promised to cycle 100 miles in the first day. And it was a paid charity event.
Okay.
And I had a lung infection, unbeknown to me. I was really struggling with the cold because it was peak winter for us over here. And I realized as the sun set that I'd have to stop at 80 miles. And I broke down on the side of the road. I was crying. It was being filmed for a documentary. And I said, I'm a failure. Like, I'm a cyclist. I'm a professional cyclist. I shouldn't, this shouldn't be hard. And after about 2 minutes, I realized I just needed to look at myself as a little girl. I've never been this age before in my life. I need to show myself compassion.
Yeah.
And yes, maybe 6 months ago, I could have done better. But comparing myself to anyone, even my past or my future self, does not serve my present. So, giving myself that virtual hug and saying, you've done your best. That's all I can do. Some days my 100% is taking on the world. Other days it's get out of bed and have a shower. Then I play my 100%. One tip that I do every day, almost religiously, that really helps is I write a gratitude journal, but I also give myself an acknowledgement. So at the bottom, I'm thanking things and events and people that happened outside. But at the end, I'm like, what do I want to pat on the back for? And that little thing may be something nobody noticed, but to me, it was a really big, big step for me to look after myself. And I want to congratulate me for that.
Oh, I love that. We forget to do that a lot of the time. We're so self-critical. We don't actually take time to reward ourselves or acknowledge ourselves for what we have achieved. That's a really good
100%.
reminder. So looking ahead, what vision do you have for the impact you wish to create in the world? And what do you see as the most significant obstacles in achieving this vision?
So my life is constantly evolving, as everyone's is. Change is the only constant, which is again a paradox. And my sport has very much evolved from competition, even against myself, to collaboration and community. And last year from the cycle, I realized that even that is still a barrier. There are people who don't have access to bikes, and there are limitations that I couldn't see to why people wouldn't want to join me. So in the short term, I'm attempting a walk where I'm holding the limelight for someone else. So my sport is now being used to build a platform. I've met someone from Cardiff University who's a world leading expert in freshwater. He's also an asylum seeker and refugee from Pakistan because of he's LGBTQ plus I rights activist, and that's the way he chooses to live his life, and is being persecuted for it. So we're not just talking about the importance of protecting our water from that environmental stand, but also the access to water and a global, wider concern about why colonization is still happening. In sustainability in particular, the majority of people look like me and talk like me. This is not bringing every voice to the table, especially where the majority of individuals impacted are the global south. So I'm now using my sport as a platform to give Namer the place to share his voice, and then elevate him into a position where people can see and hear him. He's always been there, but for whatever reason, people weren't listening. Yeah. And I'm also committed to bringing more communities together with a world record attempt. So trying to get as many people from quite underprivileged areas of Wales to clean up a river on the same day. And that will be the mass participation amount of most people to take part in a river cleanup. And imagine that as a child. You don't just clean a river and pick up some rubbish because your teacher told you to. You're in the Guinness Book of Records. That could create a guardian of the environment, open up that growth mindset of, if this is possible, what else is? So I'm really hoping to give back generationally to communities that are sometimes overlooked.
Oh, I love that. So I've got your website scrolling at the bottom there in case anybody is inspired to participate in this cleanup. It's just amazing what can be done when a group of committed individuals gets together behind a cause like this. And I can see that it's very, very possible. So what advice would you give somebody who is inspired by your journey and wants to make a positive impact in their own community or field, but doesn't know where to start? What would you have wanted somebody to have said to you before you started on this quest? Give us 3 nuggets of wisdom.
The first is be bold. State what you want. Aim for what you know in your heart what makes it sing. Be bold and share it far and wide. And the second thing is stay in the why, not in the how. Let's stay in imagination and dreams and knowing that whilst we're moving, the nuances and the intricacies and also the challenges will come naturally to us. We don't always have to like list them out ahead of time, which will probably stop us taking the first step, let's be honest. So stay in that why, that possibility, like the what if this actually could happen phase. And the third is exactly what you're building with her story. We can't do this alone. We don't live life alone. Find a community so that when we fall, we don't fall far because they've brought the net up to catch us.
Oh, I absolutely love that. That is so cool. Now, let's think about legacy and impact. How do you want to be remembered, Kate? And what impact do you hope your work, including the Strong Voice podcast and your coaching, will have on future generations?
Curiously, I don't think about this much. I don't have children, so maybe that legacy piece keeps missing. I strive that every day, if this was my last, would there be something I'd regret? And the answer is no. So I do live a life without regrets. I appreciate that selfish aspect of things. And another goal of mine is, it may not be a comfortable legacy, but whenever I leave someone, I want them to have left with a wider perspective of life, seeing more potential, more color, more opportunity. I wouldn't say that's always very comfortable because sometimes it takes, when we have a very narrow mindset or philosophy or belief structure, even if it's holding us back, when we expand, it is painful. So I wouldn't, please don't think I'm just jumping around giving people hugs. Sometimes it is a little bit of a crack to break their shell. But I do hope people see that I do elevate, that I'm raising the bar, not just for the water level, for all of us to rise together, but saying, no, we can do more. You know, I'm 45. I was 42 when I broke 3 world records, one of which cycled 24 hours on a bike. I'm not a professional athlete. There are many reasons why I couldn't and shouldn't be doing what I do, but I do. There is no excuse other than feeding that being reasonable. Stop living a life of reason and start living a life of potential.
Oh, I love that. My last question for you, I'm going to teleport you into the future, and we're going to have a little thought experiment and go and have a conversation with the 100-year-old you. At the rate you're going, you'll probably live to 120.
I don't know. It's either that or a dramatic cliff edge experience.
So if I could teleport you into the future, Kate, to meet the 100-year-old you, and you meet this wise woman who's sitting in her rocking chair, surrounded by her dogs, her cats, her children, whoever is there at that time. If you could go and have a conversation with her right now, based on how you're living your life and how she's guided you to that point, what would you say to her when you finally meet her?
I think I'd say thank you. I love you so much. I thank you. You did your best at every occasion. And even when you made mistakes, I can see that you cleaned it up and you apologized. Uh, Thank you for being relentlessly fierce in moving forwards. Yeah, I think that would be it. I would also potentially say, could you have been a little nicer to me? I sometimes, I'm very supportive and positive to others, and a little bit harsh on myself. So that might be something I just creep in.
I love it. I love asking that question because a lot of women don't even realize that that wise woman is already in us. She's that quiet voice who tells you to leave a relationship, a marriage when things aren't working out. She's that little quiet voice that says, go left, go right, do it, don't do it. And as women, we need to learn to trust ourselves and know that we have all of the answers to everything we're trying to create. And you are such an amazing example of that, Kate. I'm just so privileged to have had this interview with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. It's been an absolute delight.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is a platform that brings you stories from women from all over the world, movers and shakers and change makers, with a mission and a vision to leave this planet a better place than we found it. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing woman. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Kate, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep